Right, cool. Thank you so much, Dr. Manori, and everyone for giving me this opportunity. I am much in debt to all my teachers, starting with my father, who was my first meditation teacher, to Venerable Konanya Thero, and Venerable Olane Ananda Thero, who is here. These were teachers that I have met in person and learned. Then, of course, many other Venerable Theros who I have learned by following their talks and meditation practices on YouTube and so on. So the full gamut of thanks would go right back to the original monks of the Sasana who managed to preserve such a valuable gem throughout these 2,600 years, and to Venerable Theros like Olande Ananda and Venerable Konan, who passed away recently, for keeping the traditions and the Dhamma gem alive. So with a lot of gratefulness to all the teachers of all of us who have helped us in this path. So it's always good to start from where we know, and that is anything to do with Vipassana. Always a good place to start is with things that we know and how we function, because ultimately Vipassana is about insight into the reality. And we do know that right now we live in a conventional world. We see things that are not real, mainly due to the scope, limitation of scope in our senses. So if we consider the 6 sense doors, especially the visual sense door, and if we understand how we function, I would like to give an example of your eye when it comes in contact with a visual object like a flower. We know that then eye consciousness arises, and the flower and eye consciousness creates what we call the passa, the contact. We know passa paccaya vedana, that leads to sensations. So if we refer to the 5 aggregates, rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana, or other form, the sensations, the feelings, form, feelings, perception, and mental formations or reaction, and consciousness. So consciousness is required to be aware of everything. If we don't have the consciousness, then we are not aware. And that is why there are so many things in the world, but we see only very little. And often we are reminded by people when they tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, how come you didn't, I waved at you, and how come you didn't wave back at me? We always say, oh, sorry, I didn't notice, so I didn't see you. Why don't you see somebody? It's because your attention is not there, right? So even though there are the sense doors present in us all the time, we need our mind to actually make it work. You need the mind's attention, right? That is where the contact starts. So you have a sense door, you have a sense object, sense consciousness comes the moment it is all in contact, and with the contact comes the feelings. Now the feelings, the Vedana, are twofold. There are physical sensations, and then there are the emotional feelings as well. And the type of Vedana can be pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. Now, the Buddha gave a lot of emphasis to the Vedana as one of the reasons that we even come into being, because anything that is pleasant, the pleasant sensations, gives rise to greed, lobha. Anything unpleasant gives rise to aversion, dvesha. And any neutral feeling is where we usually get confused with the whole me, mine, the delusion. Of course, there's delusion in greed and there's delusion in aversion as well. Because the moment I think that I like something, there's delusion of me, myself, and things I like. And the moment I think I dislike something, there's again delusion of me, mine, myself, things I dislike. But given that greed and aversion is on the forefront, many times we kind of miss the delusion there. But when there are neutral feelings, neutral sensations, that is when we are aware that I am experiencing something and I'm neither fussed about it, nor do I care about it. But that is where we get the strong feeling that there is a me. There is a me, there's an I, there's a being here. And this was something that I grappled with for a long time, because theoretically, when we are taught, especially in school, when we are taught Buddhism and we are told that there is no self, then you look around and you're like, really? But I feel I'm here, right? So then you kind of feel this is going to be very hard, because I'm not supposed to be here, but I actually feel that I exist. I feel that I am the person who was the baby, the child, the teenager, the youth, the middle-aged person. It's all based on my memories for sure, but I feel that it was me in those past nearly 50 years when I look back. And I also feel it's me that is going to be there in the next hour, tomorrow, when I make plans for next week, next month, and God forbid, if I may use the word, next many years, right? I project myself to the future through imagination. So memory of the past, imagination of the future has given me a feeling that I exist. So I was confused about this for some time until thankfully in one of the talks, the monk said that you feel that you exist and that is the problem. I said, okay, good. Somebody is acknowledging that is the problem. That is good, because otherwise I think many people just give up when they just hear theory in out of context. You feel that it's just too far, too difficult, and just too much. Also, this whole thing about I'll complete the 5 aggregates, but I want to talk about this feeling of self, because it is, after all, something we feel. This whole idea of a self, it comes with also how we associate. We look around and we see the body. And from our small age, we have been taught initially by our parents and later by our teachers. This is your body, this is your nose, this is your hands, look after them, don't break them. These are your stuff, look after your things. And society is also about refining things for us. If you're already in trouble, it's about really enhancing the trouble by showing us how to enjoy things, right? This is how you enjoy music, this is how you enjoy drama, and everything. So all of those things. So society is built around a very firm conviction of self, and it stands to gain from it monetarily, absolutely. So that is why the Buddha said that anyone who is in the path and trying to really understand what's going on is swimming upstream, right? You're going against everything that society is built on. People like to believe in, and naturally even now, you will find that not everybody, even in your families, are aligned with this. They might think you're mad. Remember once Venerable Ajahn Brahmavancho gave some insight into it and said, you know that you are on a Dhamma path when your family tells you that you are mad. Right? That was quite a relief for me, certainly, to hear that. So this whole feelings is the starting point of trouble, as I call it, because that is where this whole misconception starts. This feeling of there is me, I exist, and there are things I like, I want them to last. There are things I dislike, I want them to be gone forever. And there are probably few things that I really don't care about, right? And with the Vedana, the perception, for me, I felt perception is like, if you think of the brain like a supercomputer, perception is like the files you have saved, information. So in the first example, I said, when the eye sees a flower, so imagine we see a rose. Then the perception pulls out the file on roses, and there will be lots of information about roses depending on how interested you were in it. So there might be colors of roses in there, there might be the size of roses, then there might be concepts like roses grow best in cool climates like Nueva Elia. Don't even think of trying to grow roses in warm, hot, humid areas like Colombo. So these are all concepts and data and various other things that we have put into that file and filed it away, so that when contact is made and the sensations come, the file is opened and then interpretation starts happening. Now, the interesting thing about these files, these perceptions, are that they are the data. If you look at the data, they're artificial, right? They're personal and they're distorted, because very few people agree on this anyway. My favorite example of perception being artificial and personal is when two people marry, try seeing how they agree about how much of salt is required in cooking, right? Depending on where they grew up and how, with my husband who is from down south, we always have a debate about how much salt is required for a meal to be pronounced right. So what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad? It's all artificial, it's all personal, and it's distorted, because if you look at what is really going on, we hardly hold any one experience long enough to even experience it. Our experiences change so fast, with 6 sense doors firing at the same time, and us being so distracted in addition, and we having so many interests on top of it. We are hardly in one moment of experiencing anything. It's all changing all the time, and that's at a very superficial level. At a very deep level, we do know that change, even to feel something and to perceive something, that the same thing gets repeated countless number of times before it gets to an intensity that we are even aware of something is going on. So the interesting thing is, whether it is our body, whether it is the 5 aggregates, whatever it is, it's all minute, tiny particles that cannot be fathomed at a normal, in a normal conventional way. We cannot see it fast enough. We cannot hear it fast enough. And what we see is also not the reality. Coming back to the rose, the eye does not know a rose. The eye only knows color and shapes. And if you think of the fuss we make in this world over color and shapes, especially if you ask a couple of ladies to discuss how a house should be decorated and what is good taste, that will be quite interesting, right? So the whole seeing color and shape and the rest of the story is in the mind based on our perceptions, the stories, the concepts. And then comes the reaction, the mental formations, based on whether we are liking it, whether we want to hold on to it and enjoy it, or if we don't like it, we also hold on to it. We hold on to it with aversion and try to get rid of it. Either ways, there's grasping and clinging. It goes up to the upadana level, right? Now, the difference with an enlightened being would be they see the same flower, maybe the sensations are the same, but the perception is based on reality, that everything is changing, everything is subject to conditions. And that makes everything very, very unstable. Anything unstable, which is changing and subject to conditions, cannot be pleasant, right? We know how much we dislike change, and whenever there's a change, how much we put time and effort to get back to a new equilibrium. And imagine needing to discover and create new equilibriums all the time. That is a lot of work and a lot of unpleasantness. So unstable things based on conditions, impermanent things are unpleasant. And how do we see unstable, unpleasant things? Certainly they are not in my control, because if things were in my control, I would want them to be stable and pleasant. So if they are not in my control, they cannot be me or mine. So an enlightened being's perceptions are only that everything is impermanent, it's unpleasant, and there is no self in it. And therefore, there's nothing to grasp, there's nothing to cling to. So there'll be no reaction, no mental formations, and no upadana and no bhava as a result. So in this whole process, if there's one place to be really aware and try and reverse the process or stop the process, that would be the Vedana, because sense data enter in the sense doors. The eye will see color and shapes. The ear will get sound waves. The nose will get various perfume notes. And the tongue will get 6, 7 distinctive tastes. That's all that's there in the world, isn't it? Sweetness, bitterness, sourness, saltiness. There's really only 6 or whatever. There's nothing more. And the body knows to distinguish between the touch sensation, and the mind has thoughts and moods and daydreaming and imagination, past memories. So this is the lot that we are made of. And what is stopping us from seeing the reality is the reality cannot be perceived in conventional manner. Therefore, it has to be understood at an insightful manner. Had it been perceivable at a conventional manner, maybe we would have got it, right? So when I see somebody coming, so let's say I see my good friend Anuja or Dr. Manori is coming towards me, I would see a bundle of atoms, right? I would see empty space. I would see nobody's coming towards me. There's nothing. But our eyes are quite limited in what it can see. It can see only aggregates. It cannot see things in their real form. So the aggregate, therefore, looks like it's a person, looks like it's a stable person. So both the ladies on Poya Day, and I'm seeing them now, and they look exactly the same, right? And ladies in particular have a have a good skill in looking the same after 5 years or even 10 years, right? We say, oh my God, you look the same, right? With a lot of effort. We all know what we do take effort for that. Not only at in a conventional way, we don't see the reality. We like it. We want it to be stable. We want it to be pleasant, and we want it to be me. And therefore, we spend our entire life building on that, trying to keep things the same way, trying to make things pleasurable and all for me and myself, right? So now on a path and trying to understand non-self, trying to understand impermanence, trying to understand unpleasantness. This is 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years of habits we are trying to change overnight. And of course, it's going to be hard, right? So the technique that we practiced last year was Vedana Vipassana from the Goenkaji technique, which is to observe sensations. And the whole idea behind this was to experience change as it is happening in the moment. Now, a problem with the whole reality of impermanence is, one is it's not tangible in a conventional manner, and also it takes quite a period of time to see real change, whether it is of people we know or even material things. But we can imagine that the change we see in 10 years is not suddenly happening in leaps and bounds. Rather, it happens every day on a gradual basis. But we are unable to see it. So the Vipassana techniques are to help us to either experience it or at least come close to experiencing it. So a nice example that we use is if you look at air, we all know that there is a gentle breeze all the time present. And how do we know that? If we look out of the window and if we look at leaves in a tree, let's say there's a mango tree nearby, if you carefully look at the trees, you can see that the leaves are shaking and shifting to the wind. Now, there might be a day where there's no breeze, and because you don't see the leaves shifting. But if you really look closely, you can still see that no, the leaves are shifting. It's just not visible unless you really carefully look for it, right? And given that the leaves, there's a little bit of a gentle movement in the leaves, you can imagine that there must be a very gentle breeze. So similarly, the change that is taking place in our body, our cells are either getting born or they are changing all the time, or they are decaying, dying and getting born again. So that is a lot of activity. And there's a lot of other functions also taking place. And then there's a lot of change happening in our mind. If we take the 5 aggregates, the form keeps changing, then the form consciousness changes, the feelings change along with that, the perception changes, and the mental formations, the reactions change, and our consciousness keeps changing. So the mind changes even faster than the body. So all these mind and body changes can be experienced through what we call sensations. So what are these sensations? So these sensations are very fine things that you can actually feel in your body. They can be little things like a very light heaviness or a lightness, a warmth, a coldness, tingling feeling, a light scratchy feeling, itchy feeling, like some ants are running around, or a numbness. something like expansion, a contraction, a wetness, a dryness. Various very, very fine, subtle feelings are there across our body. Now, usually we don't feel them because we are not looking for them. It's like the breath. Now, since the time we are born until we die, the body is breathing, but we are not conscious of it. We are only conscious of it when we are doing anapanasati meditation, or we have run very fast, or we have got scared for something and our breath is quite intense, and then we can feel the heavy breathing. So similarly, these sensations, unless you are looking for them, you don't feel them. And that too, the mind has to get quietened and focused and concentrated. So that is why before any Vipassana technique, generally it is recommended to do some samatha meditation to bring your attention to one place for one-pointedness, because generally our mind is very distracted. So usually the most popular technique is anapanasati, and this Vedanupassana, this technique that I learned, the Goenkaji technique, it's because of the teacher being Indian, Goenkaji. He was teaching the Buddha's Vedanupassana technique. Given that it was being taught by him, the technique derived the name Goenkaji technique. And it's a 10-day, I attended a 10-day course, out of which 3 days was anapanasati to develop the one-pointedness, and then 7 days of Vedanupassana, this Vipassana technique. So what this technique tries to help us to understand is the change that is taking place inside the body and the mind. So Vipassana, or rather the Satipatthana, is about introspection, right? Many times it's referred to as mindfulness, but Venerable Punnaji Thero very interestingly was explaining that mindfulness is a term not used by the Buddha. Obviously, he didn't have access to the English language, and it was a translation that was given by people who later were trying to understand what Satipatthana was. So his thinking of the word Satipatthana, he felt it comes from introspection, in really understanding what's going on internally. Because generally we are focused on what's going on externally, right? So internally, with so much of change happening in the body and the mind, and then those are experienced through these sensations. And by watching these sensations, you can imagine the amount of change that is taking place. It is like on a day when there was no breeze. If you look at the leaves carefully, you can still see that the leaves there's a very gentle movement of the leaves, and then you can understand from that even though you can't feel the breeze, there must be a breeze present. Similarly, while we cannot directly experience impermanence due to the limitations of our cognitive ability, the ability to experience things, we can indirectly experience impermanence by observing these sensations. There's something interesting about the sensations. One is the sensations also change. Second, we can't command the sensation. Now, let's say we are examining our head, and I will be feeling, let's say, a tingling sensation. And the next time I look, it could be something else, a scratching sensation, itching sensation, or numbness. Now, suppose I have a liking to the tingling sensation. I can't command my head to always have a tingling sensation. The head will have sensations that arise and pass away, which is as per nobody's direction, nobody's control. It's just the way it is. So the lack of control, the non-selfness of it, the impermanence of it, and the appreciation that with so much of change happening, what is it that I can call mine here? Nothing seems to be there to start with. Now, in this technique, it's very systematic. That's what I really liked about the technique. It's a systematic examination of the sensations. So we start with the head. You divide the head from the top of your head. It's the front part of the head and the back part of the head. The front part can be divided into the right and the left, and the back goes to the right and the left. So the head will be divided into 4 sections, and we start with the top of the head and take a area of about the size of your palm. You can narrow it down later to about a coin, but initially it's easier to take a larger space, and observe whether you feel anything on top of your head. And what can you feel? You can feel anything. It could be a heaviness, it could be a lightness, some kind of a warmth or a coldness, a scratching feeling, a tingling, itching, a feeling like some ants are running, a numbness, a feeling of expansion, a feeling of contraction, feeling of wetness, dryness. It could be anything. And the way the technique goes is once you feel something, you move forward. You don't wait there. You don't wait there thinking, yay, I feel sensations, and just watch. No, it's just an observation. And this whole meditation, in fact, any meditation is about developing equanimity, to say that, look, there is nothing good or nothing bad about these sensations. There's nothing to like or dislike these sensations. There's nothing right or wrong about it. It's just a sensation. And with that equanimity, you move forward. So if you start with the top of your head, you move forward and see whether you can feel any sensations. If you can, you keep moving until you complete the front right part of your head. And then you move to the front left part and the back side of your head, the right side, and then the left side. So what happens if you don't feel a sensation? If you don't feel a sensation in a place you're examining sensations, then you wait for a minute or two. Even 3-4 minutes is fine, but given that it takes a while to, you can imagine, to examine your entire body, general recommendation is watch for a minute. But if you wish, initially you can watch a little bit more. Why it's not recommended to stay on is there's nothing to be successful or feel like you didn't make it or something. It's just a matter of just moving, because sometimes there are some places which is sensitive to feelings, and there are some places that are not sensitive to feelings. So and it's a matter of just systematically examining it. So in this systematic examination, we look at the head, then we look at the face, the neck, and we eventually call the entire head with the head, face, and up to the neck. Then we examine the right shoulder, the right hand, left shoulder, left hand, both up to the fingertips. Then the front of the body, upper body, back of the upper body, then the right leg and the left leg. A systematic examination. Now, I remember when I tried this at Hindagala, Dhammakuta, it took a good 1 hour to do this systematic examination. And there were sensations in most parts of the body, and there were no sensations in some parts. So it takes a while to get the hang of it. But of course, if you are a regular meditator, that is a samatha meditator, you will just get the hang of it really fast, because it's all about how much you can focus your attention and how much you are sensitive to subtle things. So it's all about practice. Now, once you go through the entire body in a systematic manner, then the next step is to examine the body in pairs, front of the head, back of the head, both hands together, upper part of the body, and both legs together. And then as you get the hang of it, you look at the full body, the front of the full body, back of the full body, and finally you get into what we call the sweeping technique. That is as you inhale, you come from the sole of your feet to the top of your head, and as you exhale, from the top of your head back to the sole of your feet. And in this sweeping technique, even if you don't feel sensations in between, even if you focus only on your sole and the top of your body and keep taking your attention from the sole to the top of the head to the sole. As you do this a couple of times and as you align it with your breathing, then after a while you get the full body sensations in the sweeping method. And the last part of the technique is when everything gets to a dissolving point. That is, you are so refined in your ability to feel sensations that you start experiencing the emptiness that is actually present here. Because if you technically look at it, if you think of what you studied about atoms in school, an atom is actually empty space, right? There's a very little mass in the nucleus. It's very, very little, and even tinier, extremely tiny masses of electrons going around. So an atom, if you look at the space that atom occupies, most of it is empty space, and we are therefore mostly empty space. So this whole dissolving, it's just getting you refined and refined in your ability to experience what is really going on here. So that is the technique. And what is interesting about this technique is you get to experience impermanence in the moment-to-moment impermanence, because the way we have, the way we understand impermanence is mostly a theoretical point of view, right? Because we have heard about it, read about it. That is what we call the Shrutamaya Prajna, right? Things that you have, wisdom that you have gained by reading or hearing. And then, of course, whenever we hear something or read something, we think about it, we reflect on it. And that is the Chintamaya Prajna, the reflection, wisdom you gain by reflection. And then here what I describe this technique is experiential wisdom, Bhavanamaya Prajna, where you can really get to experience through sensations how impermanence is taking place here and now. Now, how does this tie into then the path, right? Let me just elaborate on that, and then we can take questions. So the path is all about the middle path, and we know the Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, we know the full works there, the eightfold path. Interestingly, how we have understood Samma Ditti, its right view, right? Samma being right and Ditti being view. Now again, I'm a big fan of Venerable Punyaji Mahathera's talks, and he was referring to something which I personally like. Again, all these things come down to your personal preferences, I suppose. He was referring to Samma as harmony, right? And Samma Ditti as a harmonious perspective. And if something is a harmonious perspective, then the opposite must be a conflicting view, right? So what is the conflicting view that normal or rather unenlightened beings have? The conflicting view we have is that we don't want to die, right? We don't want things to change. We want everything to be the way I want. And the problem is that that is not reality, right? The reality is that I don't exist. And if I don't exist, who is there to die anyway, right? And nirvana is also called a state of deathlessness. If you don't exist, there's nobody to die, is there? Now, harmonious perspective is an angle you take. We by default, we have a conflicting angle where there's our emotional mind and our rational mind always at conflict. The easiest way to explain our emotional mind and rational mind is if you take the Panchilpada, right? The 5 precepts that the Venerable Thero upheld us with today. Interestingly, if you look at Buddhist across the world, or just take the Buddhist in this country, how many of us take the 5 precepts and how many of us stick with it? Now, why do we take the 5 precepts? Because our rational mind knows that it's a good thing to do, right? And then why do we break it? Because our emotional mind finds ways to justify it, right? And I have had friends who said that, yeah, of course, I made a commitment to keep them, but that was at the temple. And at the temple, I don't break the 5 precepts, right? So I'm like, good for you. You should spend more time at the temple then. The emotional mind is where it's the animal nature of us, and we are born wired to it. And overcoming that requires the rational mind to get to the driving seat. Now, unfortunately, whenever the emotional mind, the rational mind is in conflict, it's the emotional mind that wins, right? And gradually eroding this emotional mind and having the rational mind completely in control, always in the driving seat, it's a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift is what is required, and this whole Noble Eightfold Path is to create that paradigm shift. It starts with this harmonious perspective that I don't exist, and if I don't exist, actually there's no real problem in this world, is there? All the problem is there because I believe that I exist, right? If I really understand that I don't exist, then there's really no problem, and that is a harmonious perspective. Now, this harmonious perspective is based on impermanence, dissatisfaction, and non-self. And that is where experiencing even one of these things, if you experience impermanence, then you know that if everything is changing so much in this moment, if everything is so unstable, and it can only lead to unpleasantness, and that means there is nobody in control here. There's certainly not me or mine here. And once such a angle of looking at life gets established, such a paradigm shift calls for a reorientation, and that is what Sankappa is, a harmonious orientation. It's almost like I was driving down the road and suddenly I realized that I have been going in the wrong direction, right? I have been blindly driving because everybody is driving in that direction. And now I realize that actually I need to make a U-turn, a complete U-turn. And I start going in the opposite direction. And that is possible when there is a harmonious perspective, samadhi, right? So with samadhi, sammasankappa, then what happens, you really, once you are clear on the path and the direction, you really hit the accelerator, don't you? So that is with you, how you talk, how you act, how you live, the samma vacha, samma kammanta, samma ajiva, all that is then really molded by the harmonious perspective and the harmonious orientation. And with that, we then put more effort, because all of this is giving you such peace and joy. You definitely put more effort into it. What is the effort you need here? So the effort is, first of all, you need to guard the senses, right? Because all the problems are coming because of the data that comes from the sense doors getting misinterpreted. So if you are standing in guard and observing your sense doors, then you can remind yourself that what you are seeing is only color and shapes. What you are hearing is only a sound. What you are tasting is just a taste and nothing else, right? Nothing to go to war, nothing definitely to start a fight with the people in your life, right? But we forget ourselves so often because the feeling overwhelms us and the perception is so strong that this is good, this is bad, this is what I like, and this is what I don't like. So guarding the senses, and wherever we were not good at guarding, when we realized that the sense doors have brought some feelings, has created some feelings, then it's about changing the whole image about it, right? It's about building a strong mind based on kindness and compassion, understanding that not everyone understands these things and being compassionate about it, and maintaining this introspection. So this is how we put the right effort. And that is the Samma Vayama, Samma Sati is about the whole the introspection, and Samma Samadhi is about equanimity. When you are in a place of equanimity, there is no conflict anymore. So no matter what you see, no matter what you hear, what you smell, taste, touch, or think about, it doesn't disturb your peace. It doesn't disturb your calmness, because you understand that whatever it is going to change, and it is unstable. It is unpleasant, and it's not me, no I, no self. So what is the problem? You just let it be. And I would like to say everyone lives happily ever after, but so let me stop there and let's open up for questions. Thank you.